Before I get going, how many nerds are there today? One, two. Okay, so we have a couple that might understand this introductory thing. Let's see how this goes, okay? I grew up in a lot different world than we live in today. I heard a public speaker say, or I guess it wasn't a public, I don't know, actually remember where I heard this, but either I was reading an article or listening to somebody, I don't remember. But whoever it was, they made the comment that they never grew up, they were never the age of their kids. They were the years of their kids, not the age of their kids. And I thought that was an interesting distinction because what he was getting at is the world has changed. He's never grown up in this world. He's been that age before, but it's totally different. I mean, I listen to some people tell me about their childhood, like Thurman. He was 98 years old before he passed. He told me some things from his childhood, and I was like, wow, that's like a whole different planet. And then I talked to other people like around my dad's age, and I mean, that's vastly different. And then I look at kids nowadays, and they're vastly different from when I grew up as a kid. And, just to give you a little bit of a heart attack, the PS3 is considered a what is it called, classical game console now? What in the world? What? I thought that was still a new one. What year are we in? Did I jump in the DeLorean? Goodness sakes. But, it's just a whole different world. Back in the day, we used to have jokes, and they'd sound something like this. Hey, why was 6 afraid of 7? Because 7 ain't 9, and ha, 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 we thought we were super funny. Well, nowadays, it's changed. The whole punchline has changed. Nowadays, the joke is, why is 6 afraid of 7? Because 6, 7. What does that mean? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows. Nobody knows. The whole thing has changed. But one thing that's gotten very different is movies. Movies are just very different. I grew up for things like, Indiana Jones, Star Wars, the good movies. But then Disney started this like vendetta to ruin everything that I love. And so obviously Star Wars was one of those to fall next. But in the original Star Wars, which was called Episode 4, if you were ever not into Star Wars, which didn't make sense, I admit. We all knew it didn't make sense, okay? Once again, it was another time. But Episode 4, which is actually the first one, there's this scene in it, which is shown in the picture here. The guy on I guess it'd be your left, his name's Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's called a Jedi Knight, which is basically a space sword fighter with magical powers. Okay, just roll with me on this. And the guy he's fighting, he is the evil the evil Darth Vader, who is in cahoots with the evil Empire, okay? That's all the background you really need for this. But in this scene that happens here, Obi-Wan's talking to Darth Vader, and he says, strike me down, and I'm going to become more powerful than you can even imagine. And first off, how many people have actually seen this scene? Okay, so a couple of you, all right. So some of you are kind of getting what I'm saying. So anyways, he says, strike me down, and I'll become more powerful than you can even imagine. So Darth Vader does strike him down. He kills him. And the result of Darth Vader killing him is a couple of different problems, very big problems. First off, Obi-Wan becomes kind of like this immortal Force ghost that is able to teach another Jedi Knight to come who will eventually defeat Darth Vader. But then another thing is that by Darth Vader getting revenge on his arch enemy, it becomes a burden to Darth Vader that ultimately derails him by the end of the third or sixth movie, however you want to count things. But Obi-Wan losing this battle to the evil Darth Vader, it resulted ultimately with the rebellion's victory and the Empire crumbled. So just in case you weren't following, Darth Vader represents the Empire, and when ultimately by him doing this, by him defeating Obi-Wan, the Empire was destroyed. You might say, okay, that's great, nerd talk and everything. What's your point? I know. Okay, here's the thing. I could seriously have conversations with you guys all day about Dune or Star Wars. Let's have that. But we'll stay on point today. Okay, we'll stay on point. But so just in case you weren't following along, let me kind of make it simpler. Satan is Darth Vader, and we're Obi-Wan. Okay? Here's the thing. Satan striking us down will ultimately result in Jesus' victory if it's about Jesus. If your life is about Jesus, and that means that when you get these times when Satan wins, do you ever have those times in your life where it feels like Satan has the one up in your life, that you've lost the battle, that he's the victorious one, you just feel run down, you messed up again, you just can't get it together, that? You ever feel like that? Well, in those times when that happens, it can ultimately result in Jesus being glorified if it's about him. So today we're talking about my loss, his victory, and we'll be continuing in our series in Philippians chapter 1. And I promise you, that's the end of the nerd talk. I swear, okay? Hand over my heart, all right? So we'll be reading in Philippians chapter 1, if you could please stand for the reading of the word. And we'll start in verse 14. Okay, it says, starting in verse 10, we'll go through 18. Most of the brothers have gained confidence in the Lord from my imprisonment. We read that last week. And dare even more to speak the word fearlessly. To be sure, some preach Christ out of envy and rivalry, but others out of goodwill. These preach out of love, knowing that I am appointed for the defense of the gospel. The others proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, thinking in their heads that they will cause me trouble in my imprisonment. What does it matter? Only that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is proclaimed, and in this I rejoice. Yes, and I will continue to rejoice. Lord, we thank you for your word. I thank you for this church. I pray you'd bless them. Give them ears to hear whatever you'd have them to hear, Lord. And let this place, this moment be a holy moment. Let these words and this message be a holy moment. Lord, that you would guide my mouth and let me say what you would have me to say. And Lord, may your name be glorified in me today, and may my name become very little today. We love you, God. Amen. You may be seated. Boy, I tell you what, I got this new shirt, and I love it. I got it from Melissa, and I really like it, but I didn't take into account singing with it on, and I feel like I'm being smothered. So I love this shirt, but maybe next time I sing songs, I'm not going to wear it. And nothing against the shirt, it just has to do because I feel like I'm dying. The main focus, the main idea I want you to get from today's message is this. We can always make Jesus the focus. It doesn't matter what situation you're in. It doesn't matter what you're going through. It doesn't matter, if you feel like a failure, if you feel like victorious, it does not matter. You can always make Jesus the focus. Jesus can get glory from anything you're going through in your life. So I'm gonna hop back through verses 15 through 17, but I'm not gonna read the whole verses. I want to highlight the bad people, if you will, in the situation, okay? I want to just highlight what he says about them. Check this out. He says, some preach Christ out of envy, rivalry, selfish ambition, not sincerely, thinking that they will cause me trouble. Boy, with pastors like this, man, in various points of my life, I've been that pastor, and in various points of my life, I've also known pastors like this. But here's a question. We read these verses, I guess you could say, focus in on these parts of these verses, and I think that we have to ask a question. Why were they doing this? If they're preaching about Jesus, why on earth are they doing this? Trying to cause Paul problems. What's the purpose? And see, this is where it seems irritating at first, but there's a reason. It doesn't say. That's the part that sounds irritating, but there's a reason why it doesn't say, because it doesn't really matter. You see, everyone has a reason for what they do. If you go to a counselor, they're going to tell you about why you struggle with a thing. Somehow it's, your mom's fault or whatever, and whatever. I mean, there's all these reasons why evidently you're not responsible for your own actions because you had a rough childhood or whatever. And not to say that counseling isn't beneficial. I'm not saying that at all. But a lot of times people go to counselors just to find out, what traumatic thing have I gone through in the past, and whose fault is it that I'm acting like this? And I don't really think that really has much in way of glorifying God. But everyone has a reason for what they do. The thing about it is, though, that having a reason, does not make you right. Having a reason does not make you right. I'll give you a couple examples, okay? People have reasons for why they're abusive. Talk to any guy that hits his wife, and I promise you he'll say, she was whatever, shooting her mouth off or whatever. There's a reason why it was okay that I hit her. There's a reason why it's okay that I'm abusive with the kids. There's a reason why it's okay for me to be bad-mouthing people or gossiping or stealing. Hey, it's okay that I'm stealing because It's okay that I'm cheating. It's okay that I'm lying. I have a reason for why I'm doing it. Having a reason doesn't make you right. The thing is, though, and this is a good thing, you can tell a lot about your rightness by your motives. In other words, when you are in a conflict, ask yourself this: is your motivation that you want to be right? Or do you want to reconcile the situation? Do you want to be right? Or do you want everybody to know your side of the story? I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Do you want to do what's right? Or do you want everybody to know your side of the story? When you're in a conflict, is your motivation more concerned with you being validated, or is it more concerned with people being brought to Christ? Another example. What is your life about? What is your motive for living? Why are you still alive? Is it something like, is your motivation simply money? Because it says the love of money is going to lead you to all kinds of things. So if your point of existence is simply to make more money, that's not really good. If your point is simply to live for pleasure, I want to watch as many movies as I can, read as many books as I can, well, that ultimately doesn't mean much of anything either. Your motivation is really actually more important than what you do. See, it's better to do the wrong thing with a good heart, trying to do the right thing, than it is to do the right thing with a bad heart. Imagine, and I've used this example before, imagine if Jesus came to die on the cross and he's like, man, I hate all of you guys so bad. Oh, I'm going to die on the cross, but I really hate you. I just wish you didn't exist. Well, that wouldn't really be much by way of a loving Savior, right? I mean, even if he died on the cross, the motivation is pretty far off the mark. See, Jesus didn't just do the right thing, he also had the right motive. Why do you do it? What is your purpose for existence? If you do what's right, but your motive is wrong, is it still right? That's an interesting question, and I don't think I have an answer today, because I think that it's also more than your motivation either. And that will lead us to the question that I imagine many of you might be asking. So hold on, you're saying, Pastor, they had to do everything perfect? Have to do everything right all the time? Well, actually, on the contrary. See, if you ask new parents, what kind of a parent do you want to be? They always say the same thing: I want to be a good parent. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a good parent? I've known some people shower their kids with gifts. I've seen some people not even be present for their kids. So what does it matter? Like, what thing matters that makes you a good parent? I would say this. After being a parent myself, after watching other people parent, and after reading the Word of God, I've come to the conclusion that I think all that makes a good parent is having a motivation of intentionally handing off the baton. That's it. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to say dumb things. You're going to do dumb things. You're not going to be able to do everything that you wanted to do. But what makes you a truly good parent is when your motivation in your heart is that you want to pass on the baton. You're passing on the baton of faith. You're passing on the baton of working hard. You want your kids to be able to survive when you're gone. You don't want them dependent on you. This is why I always talk against giving your kids allowances that they didn't earn, because all that you're doing is giving them money where they don't appreciate the value of money. That's throwing money away. And it's not doing them any favors because they don't learn how to work hard. Very important, very important. So what's actually better is if you are intentionally handing off the baton. Okay, so when I'm gone, I want my kids to be able to survive without me. Let's teach them how to do their laundry, how to cook their own meals, that's what the purpose of chores are. Not because you're bored, you want your kids to be bored too. You're teaching them how to do things without you when you're gone. Have them do their own laundry. Have them cook their own meals. Have them go shopping for their own supplies. Teach them these things. And obviously, I don't do all those things with the kids at this point. But I can guarantee you, Micah can cook. Teresa can cook. Freya's getting there. Paul and Sam can do some things. Not full-on leave them in the kitchen alone kind of stuff. But they're heading that direction. Why? Because my purpose as a parent is to enable them to no longer need me here. That if I die, if I'm out of the picture, they continue to exist. That is the goal of parenting. That is the ultimate goal of parenting. I want their faith to not be contingent on my faith. I want their faith to remain firm even if I deny Christ. I want their faith to stand firm and push forward and find God. That's the motivation. So when you say, what's a good parent? Well, it's a little bit of a difficult question. So I wouldn't say that you have to do everything perfect. Rather, I'd say where your heart is what's important. It's not about whether you do everything perfect. And you might say, well, hold on, though, Pastor. If it's all about my emotion, my motivation, and my heart, we've got a problem because, sometimes my heart just is not in it. Sometimes I just don't care. Sometimes my motivation is bad. Sometimes I'm spanking my kids, and I'm not doing it because they did something wrong, that they need some kind of negative reinforcement. I'm doing it because I'm mad. Sometimes I'm doing something, Pastor, and you don't get it. Sometimes I'm just not into it. Pastor, today I came to church, and I'm really not even into being here today. Here's the thing, okay? So let me clarify that. If that's you, and you're saying sometimes my heart's just not in it, take courage and keep going. God will eventually change things. People think when I became a pastor, somehow I stopped being a man, and I evolved into this other being, almost like an angel, called a pastor. I don't struggle with things like regular people. I know things more than other people. Well, that's all wrong. Oh, that's wrong. Oh, that's wrong. Do you think that the board members come to every single board meeting and think, hooray, we get to go over financial stuff. Hooray. No, they're probably tired from a long day of work thinking, I could really use some food and some sleep and leave me alone. Well, it's the same thing true for me. So, sometimes I'm just not into it. Sometimes I'm preaching and my mind's a million miles away. Sometimes I'm visiting somebody and I'm already thinking about how I wish I was somewhere else. I'm not perfect all the time, and my motivation is not always perfect. But here's something that's interesting. I've been with a lot of people while they were dying, and one thing I have never seen any of them care about is what my motivation was for holding their hands while they were scared. I've never seen them crying, ask me to pray for them, and then say, is your motivation perfect for being here? They just don't care. They care that I'm there. So for that reason, obviously we have to admit that it's not all about your motivation. Your motivation matters, but even your motivation is not going to be perfect all the time. You have to keep going even in the midst of all those things. So that takes us back to these two parties who had very different motivations. The first party is the one that we've already kind of focused in on. They're preaching out of envy and rivalry, selfish ambition, not sincerely, thinking that they will cause Paul trouble. So this first group, I think we can say that they're divisive. That would be just like a good catch-all term for this. The first two things are very closely related, envy and rivalry. This would be something like this. Why am I not recognized? I'm a better preacher than Paul is. In fact, Paul even said this, that I write really good, but when I'm talking to you, it's very disappointing. So you have people listening to Paul preach, and they're thinking, this guy can't preach worth, a hill of beans. Why am I not getting recognized as much as he is? Why don't people flock to me? Well, how come my letters aren't being recognized as Scripture? Because we have record that Paul's letters were being recognized as Scripture during Paul's life. And then it goes on to say selfish ambition. This is where I want my church to be the biggest church in town. Not because I want people to get saved, but because I want more people. It's like an ownership thing. I want more people. It'll somehow validate my ministry. I want to do my time in this small church so I can move on to a big church and leave the crumbs and shake the crumbs off my feet. Selfish ambition. When you're there not to tell people about Jesus, you're there not to help people keep seeking God. You're there not to help build people up in their faith. You're there for a check or maybe even for your own ego. But I think it goes beyond that. I think selfish ambition goes beyond that. And beyond simply, I'll make a name for myself, it can also be something like this. I'm going to tell people my side so I can get people on my side. So they'll see that I'm right and they're wrong. So they'll look at me and they'll feel bad for me. And they'll know that I was the one who was wronged. I was taken advantage of. Selfish ambition. It's all for you and your ego. A lot of times we go into conflicts and we exhibit these things in conflicts. Envy, ambition. And what makes it, I think, even worse is as a Christian, when you are, this is a crazy thing. You can be totally fine in your day-to-day life, totally fine, right? And then a problem comes by, and you're still mostly okay. You bounce back. But something about being a Christian, it like attracts these issues. And when you get mistreated, it brings out the worst in you. It's something like this. Suffering for Jesus is a struggle because you are mistreated. You respond with love, as Christ would. And then they respond bad to your good response. And so you have to keep smiling even when you're not feeling it. And obviously I'm not talking about physically smiling. I'm talking about continue to carry on when everything around you seems to just scream at you, hey, you should really get back at them. So what are these people's end goal here? These people who are preaching for their own crooked motivations, what's their end goal? Thinking they will cause me trouble. They are literally preaching about Jesus for the primary purpose of bothering Paul. I'll show you. I'll become a pastor. Goodness sakes. This will show people the truth about Paul. I've even seen where a lot of times it becomes a thing where pastors will use their podium to preach against somebody and kind of rant and rave against people. Really bad thing to get into, but it seems like that might have been part of what's going on here. Have you ever been in, here's a great way to help you relate to it since you guys aren't pastors. Have you ever been in a conflict with someone and you think you're over it, but then you hear that something bad happens to them and you're like, yes. God's wrath poured out. Finally, they know how they made me feel. Yes. Finally God's getting back at them. Yes. And you go to bed just a little bit happier. You pull the blanket just a little bit tighter around your neck. Just a little bit more excited for the next day. I think that's a really good example of what we're talking about here. See, they wanted Paul to suffer. That's the first thing, which is bad all by itself. And I think that oftentimes when we're in conflict, that's really what our heart desire is. They mistreated me, and I want them to be miserable and whatnot. Well, but then it goes on beyond that, because for him to be imprisoned was kind of seen as like a shameful thing. Remember, honor-shame culture. We don't really have an honor-shame culture, but they did. So that means the things that you do either brings honor to your family or dishonor to your family. Maybe not as bad as like China, but still there. And so for him to be in chains, that was a shameful thing. So they also want his shameful imprisonment to be troublesome. And if you look further in the book, Paul's going to talk about, the glory, not his own shame, but the glory of God, and going to talk about sharing the gospel, all these different things. And you can see that the way that they're trying to turn it into a thing of, oh, what shame. Don't you feel bad, Paul? And he just keeps trying to point it back to Christ and turn it a thing about Christ. See, apart from the conflict of, oh, he said this, or she said this, or whatever, do you want what's best? What is your goal in whatever situation you find yourself in? Do you want what's best? Do you want what's best for them, even if it's not best for you? Do you want to gloat so that people know you were the victim? Or do you just want to be comfortable? I've noticed that a lot of our prayers are focused entirely on comfort. How many times have I personally prayed for healing for different people or for myself, and the end goal of that healing was just so that I could live my life a little bit happier? It had nothing to do with God being glorified. Well, if we actually look at it in the big picture, that's pretty selfish. I mean, think about this. None of us are leaving this thing alive anyways. You know what I mean? We've only got 40 to 80 years, maybe if you're really lucky, 100, and then that's kind of it. Like Fabi, for instance, she's already she's already died. But anyways, so that takes us to the second party. Now, this party, they're also preaching, but they have very different motivations. Some preach, and we're going to skip what he says about the other group so we can focus on this group, out of goodwill. These preach out of love, knowing that I am appointed for the defense of the gospel. Well, these are two very different people. So this party, they're basically, if you look at that, they're peacemakers. They're peacemakers. This is one of the most unfair things about the gospel. We all want peace. We want peace in our house. We want peace at our jobs. We want peace everywhere. Peace in our church. Everything we want peace. But we enjoy the peace, but then when there's an opportunity for us to make peace, we don't usually seize on it. If somebody has something bad to say, we'll listen. Tell me more. Terry did what? Yes, tell me more. And it becomes a thing of basically, even it doesn't even matter if it's true anymore. It's just it feels so good and tasty is how Proverbs describes it, a tasty morsel. But these people aren't people who are just enjoying the peace. They are peacemakers. They're going into a situation that is obviously not very good if Paul's writing about it and talking about it like this, how these people are literally out to get them. It's not a good situation, and still they're making peace. Their motivations for preaching Christ, goodwill, loving, supportive of Paul's sufferings, supportive of Paul's ministries. They have true motives, and they're preaching Christ and Him crucified. That's the whole point of what they're doing. But the thing, and we're going to build up to a really big idea, okay? We're going to get there in 3 steps. The first step is I want you to understand that Paul's suffering for Christ emboldened not only his friends, but also his enemies. Look at this in verses 14 through 15. And once again, this isn't the whole verses. Most of the brothers have gained confidence. To be sure, some preach out of envy. What he's saying here is that his imprisonment, it encouraged some people who were friendly and who were sharing the gospel for good reasons. But his suffering also encouraged his enemies to preach just so that they'd irritate him. How do you like that? You're going to suffer, and your suffering is going to be the fuel that gets these people who hate you to rant and rave about you. How fun is that? Okay, so that's the first little piece there. Then that takes us to the second step in this process. Paul's response to them doing this is you do not see Paul justifying himself. You do not see Paul ranting about them. Well, they're just idiots. You know, I tried talking to them. Do you ever get up in the morning and take a shower and think about all the situations where you could tell those people how, you know, you've invented all these imaginary conversations in your head, and you're playing them all out, and you've thought of the perfect answer, and they look stupid, and you look so smart, and you're like, ha, ha, ha. Oh, if I only would have said that then I would have won that argument, and people would have known, You know, and then you get out of the shower feeling a little bit taller, and then you go back to work, and you're like, well, here it is. You don't see Paul doing that. You do not see Paul doing any of that. This is something, and now we get to the third thing. This is the thing I'm building towards. Paul understood that when you justify yourself, you change the focus. What would have happened if Paul would have justified himself and made it a thing about him? They're opposing me. Do you remember what we looked at a couple weeks ago? How he said that all of the imperial guard knew that it was a thing about Jesus because of how he responded to it? Do you remember that? It was just earlier in this same chapter. If he would have instead responded differently, but, well, those people, they're just mean. They've always had it out for me. They're jerks. I don't even know if they're really truly saved, but I did the right thing. I did this and I did this. Now it's about you. You've changed the focus. You've changed the focus. And so, yeah, people might think differently about you, maybe better, maybe worse, but now you justify yourself, you change the focus, and what happens when you change the focus is you change the outcome. See, the outcome for Paul was that Christ was glorified. Christ was glorified because Paul kept making it a thing about Jesus and not himself. I'm not suffering for my own sake. This is about Jesus. It's about Jesus. That's it. It's not about me. I might have to go through some hard times, but Jesus will be glorified. Contrast that to what would have happened if he would have had to think about me. Poor me. I'm so mistreated. Now the imperial guard doesn't know that he's being imprisoned for Jesus. They think he's being imprisoned for Paul. Now, these people are not emboldened to preach. And you might say, who cares if they're not emboldened to preach? Because they were only doing it to irritate Paul. Some of them were doing it to irritate Paul. But others were doing it from good motives. We just read that in verses 15 through 17. Some of them were still doing it for good motives. And so even though his suffering caused some people to make his life worse, it caused other people to go forward. And all the people, friend and foe, were all telling people about Jesus. You can get saved from a bad pastor. It's the message that saves, not the pastor. And that's evidently what was happening. Christ was being proclaimed. When you are in your situations, you can make it a thing about you, or you can make it a thing about God. And you can always make it a thing about God. There's nothing written down that your situation has to be something that you turn into a thing about you. See, Paul still found a reason to be thankful in all this. He's going through all these problems, and he's still thinking, hey, man, I'm so thankful for my every remembrance of you, church. I'm so happy that you guys remember me. I've been remembering you. I've been praying for you. Thank you so much for your support. I'm so happy that these people, I've encouraged them to preach the gospel, and I'm so happy that even my enemies are preaching the gospel. You just can't get this guy down. We've said this a couple times, but I'll build on it here again. Paul found reason to be thankful. You see, the situation does not at all, has nothing to do with your thankfulness. It doesn't matter what situation you're in, because this is what we tell ourselves. Some form of this. If God would just do this, I could be at rest. If God would do this, I could be happy. If God would just do this, then I could be thankful. Paul shows us that's absolute nonsense. Complete and utter nonsense. Here he is getting wrongfully imprisoned, beaten, shipwrecked, having people betray him left and right, and this guy is still focusing on the good things. Now, does that mean that he didn't hurt in his heart? No, absolutely. He probably still hurt every single day. He was probably deeply grieved for what happened to him. He probably had a lot of nights of crying himself to sleep. He was probably depressed at times. Okay, but he kept going and turned the focus. Remember a couple weeks ago we said thankfulness is a choice. It's something that you have to choose to be thankful for, because there will always be a reason to not be thankful. It doesn't matter where you are in your life, how old or how young, there will always be a reason to not be thankful. Always. You have to choose to be thankful. That's how you get the victory, by the choice that you make. This is what God says in response to our little pity party where we say, look, if God would just do this, then I could be at rest. Jesus said, he said, peace I give you, not as the world gives you. Have you ever thought about what that means, not as the world gives you? This is how the world gives you peace. You see somebody, I saw the news the other day, and they were making this big deal out of this, and the whole case was terrible. There wasn't anything about the case that was good. Like, some of the things that were said, the whole thing was bad. Okay, just the whole thing. This girl had been raped, which ultimately, right there, is a bad situation already. But then, the guy who did it, he was charged, but I was left wondering at the end of it, what does it even matter? That's not going to unrape her. She still has to live with the burden every day for the rest of her life of what was done to her. Justice has not been done. Somebody got a little bit of, back on them, revenge, kind of, but that didn't take away the hurt. It didn't take away the pain. It didn't take away the problem. See, God doesn't give peace as the world gives peace. The world says, I'll give you peace by removing conflict. Maybe you're going to go off to an island and have a vacation on the island. Maybe you're going to go off and get away from all the problems of the world. You're going to quit your job. You're going to retire or whatever, right? Well, that's not how God gives peace. God gives it like this. God takes us in the prison that we find ourselves in when our enemies are dancing on our graves and shows us joy. In the middle of the prison, joy. While your enemies seem like they won. While it seems like Satan, he beat you. He got you. God gives you joy in the middle of that. In the middle of that prison. And that's exactly where we find Paul. See, I think if we all said, hey, raise your hand if you want the joy of the Lord, what if the only way to get that joy was to wander through the muddy muck? What if Paul is experiencing joy that none of us have ever encountered? Is life so precious to you that you'd rather have your life be normal than have the joy of the Lord? See, for Paul, he's obviously overwhelmed with these things. They're obviously weighing on him. He didn't have it all together. He wasn't perfect. But through all of it, you can just see him constantly turning it into a thing. And this can be something you do too when it's in your head. And you're thinking about all the things and they're keeping you up at night and you're losing sleep over it and you're worried about it, you're stressing about it. You can choose to turn it as a thing to Christ. You can change your perspective. And in so doing, you can change the focus between I was wronged to Christ glorified. You're in a situation where your kids or your grandkids aren't talking to you anymore. What do? Your ministry is falling apart. Your relationships in life have fallen apart. You don't have anyone anymore. You had all these plans when you were a kid, then you got older, and all your plans fell apart. God gives you joy in the prison. And now let's get to the very last verse. The last verse we read, it was verse 18. What does it matter? Boy, what a weighted question. I want you to, before we go any further with the message, I want you to think about maybe something that's been on your mind lately that's really been bothering you. How you were mistreated or you went through a situation that was bad or whatever. And I just want you to kind of weigh this question in light of what you've been through. What does it matter? I think in our head, well, it matters because I was right. It mattered because what they did was wrong. It matters because I can promise you that the weight of glory is going to so far overpass whatever it is that happened to you in your life. It doesn't matter how crappy your childhood was. God's goodness is beyond it. You will die one day, and you will probably not have everything happen that you wanted to happen. But when you enter into glory, it's not going to matter. It's not. It's not even going to enter your mind. There's so many bigger things. Only that in every way, and that's hard to say, it's hard to say what does it matter when something really, truly tragic happened to you. It's not something that I can say and speak into your life. It has to be something that you have to say and speak into your own life. I can't walk that road for you. You have to get to a point where, bad things have happened to me, and I surrender it to the foot of the cross. It's about Jesus now. It doesn't matter what other people did to take advantage of me. It's about Jesus. Because people aren't going to know what you went through. You'll know. But you still have to surrender it to the Lord. Only that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is proclaimed. That's it. That's it. And we're going to read the rest of the verse in just a minute, but only that in every way, whatever happens, whether these people are doing it for the right reasons or the wrong reasons, Christ is proclaimed. And you might find yourself saying, as I was when I was reading through this, but God, it's different. Because Paul's situation was different. The people who I'm going through, they aren't preaching Christ. They're doing things to hurt me, but they're not preaching Christ in the process. So it's a different situation. And to that, I really felt the Lord speak to me and tell me this. Were Paul's guards preaching Christ either? No, they weren't. See, it doesn't matter if the reason for what you're going through is because of Christ or not. It doesn't matter if your suffering is involving somebody else preaching Christ who hates you. It doesn't matter. What matters is that there's always that choice where you can turn it to the Lord. And no matter what the situation, we can also say, with Paul, what does it matter as long as Christ is being proclaimed? But they're not proclaiming Christ, so you proclaim Christ. You make it a thing about Christ. And in the end, that's what will stand. When tempers are heavy, people will remember whatever. But if you stand long enough for people to hear what you have to say, and that message is Jesus, that's what people remember. So he goes on in the rest of the verses say, and in this I rejoice. Yes. And I am going to continue rejoicing. See, and we got just a few more things before we wrap this up, but Paul's response to the problem made it about Jesus. If you're in a bad situation, and let's say it has nothing to do with Jesus, your response will make it about Jesus. When you show patience and love and forgiveness and they don't deserve it, you'll make it about Jesus. When people are gossiping behind your back and stirring up a bunch of stuff and they think that they know what happened when they have no idea what happened, you can validate yourself and show how you were right and they were wrong, or you can make it about Jesus. Make it about Jesus. Make it about Jesus in your own heart, where no longer do you focus on the pain, you start focusing on the glory that God gets from it. Focus on Jesus as people are talking about, hey, what happened between you and them? You can take it as an opportunity to jab at them, or you can turn it towards Jesus. Paul's response made it all about Jesus. And I've found, at least in my own life, that oftentimes I'll say something like, oh, it's all about Jesus, and I'll say that kind of stuff with my mouth, but then the actions have a way of really showing whether it's about Jesus or not. I can say it's all about Jesus and then do something underhanded behind somebody's back that gets him back. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff is easy to do. It's easy to be manipulating and conniving. And you might find yourself today and say, look, Pastor, I hear what you're saying. Don't focus on the bad thing. Got it. Okay, all right. I've heard that 100 times. But here's the thing. I can't get over it. I tried. And to that, I'm just going to say this. Feelings follow actions. Do you want to learn how to enjoy witnessing? You got to stumble through not enjoying witnessing. Do you want to be able to truly love somebody? Start treating them with love. Feelings will follow. Feelings don't decide what you do with your life. Take steps to forgive, and your feelings will follow. Take steps to serve, your feelings will follow. Take steps to give, your feelings will follow. Don't let your feelings decide everything that you're going to do in the faith. The faith is about stepping out, and I will do this because this is the right thing. This is what the Lord wants. This glorifies God. And whatever feelings come and go are whatever feelings come and go. Sometimes you have to do something for a long time and really not like it before you learn to enjoy it. I see people do this with marriage all the time. They're happy when they're dating. They get married, they hate each other. And they have to stumble through that until they learn to actually love each other. Because it's a lot different saying, I love you when you're dating versus when you wake up next to somebody who kept you up all night with their snoring. And then they do a bunch of things that irritate you all day. You have to basically learn all over again how to get over it. And I think marriage is a great example of what we're talking about here. Not everything that happens to you in your life is good, obviously. But God can produce good from anything. It's like this, you know this mud out here we have in this high desert nonsense? It's magical. You take water and just start pouring it out on any random piece of dirt. And go out there every day and pour water on this random piece of dirt. And in a couple days, something's going to just start sprouting up. Where does it come from? I don't know. Some smarter person than me would probably say about something that a bird came and, had droppings or something that caused the seeds to go over. I don't know, but that doesn't make sense to me. All that I know is you water the ground and all of a sudden something grows up. That's what God is like. It can be the ugliest, nastiest situation you could have imagined yourself being in. But when God gets a hold of the situation, it changes it. See, Paul's not talking about something he doesn't know. He's talking about something he does know. He does know suffering, but he also knows God's goodness. And God's goodness can produce good from anything. From anything. All you have to do is make it a thing about Jesus. So two kind of last thoughts before we're closing out. The first thought is this. If you're in step with the Master, that means no matter what situation you're in, good can come from you, whether it's coming out of your mouth or out of your hands. So if you stop with that principle and ask yourself, well, what areas of my life am I not producing good in? And let's stop for just a second. Think over your life. What areas are you not producing good in? Is it how you're talking to people? Is it how you're doing your job? Is it how you're treating people at church? Is it in your giving and in your generosity? Is it in, something to do with work or with your family or with your home life? Do you not have time for your kids? What is it? Whatever it is, what is it? Find that area where you are not producing good, and that's the area where you are not in step with the Master. That's the area you're not in step with the Master in. When I find myself in these troubling situations, I stop for just a second and ask what Paul is saying here. I just kind of reword it for myself. Am I discouraged right now? Am I discouraged? And if you're discouraged, go through this with me, okay? Am I discouraged right now because the gospel isn't being preached, or am I discouraged right now because I don't like what's happening? What I want to happen isn't happening. I really wanted them to change. I really wanted them to do something different. I really wanted this situation not to happen. I really wanted this to not happen like this. I didn't want this person to die. I'm upset because what I want, I'm not getting my way. Or am I discouraged because Christ is not being preached? You will always have reasons for things not being about Jesus in your life. Sickness, suffering, lack, death, abandonment, betrayal, lack of funds, everything. It's always happening around you all the time where is it about Jesus or is it about you? And none of us want these bad things to happen to us, but that doesn't stop it from happening. It can still be all about Jesus. And the last thing I want to say before we close out here is, if I say control freak, you're going to think of somebody right off the top of your head that you think is a control freak. But let me just kind of close out with this. We are all a little bit of control freaks. All of us want our own way. We're like a child throwing ourselves on the floor, getting all upset because God's not doing it our way. And I think the part of that's natural. We are fleshly. We're all a little bit hypocrites, criticizing others, then playing the victim. A great example of this is, hey, don't talk bad about my kids, but I'm sure going to talk bad about your kids. Ever done that before? Defending your own kids and then bad-mouthing somebody else's kids? Come on, don't look the other way. You know what I'm talking about. Every parent has done that before in their life. Come on. But here's the thing. And with all this, and this is I guess you say the grand summary of all this, okay? God can make our imprisonment proclaim Christ. That's it. That's where we're closing right there. Whatever imprisonment you find yourself in, God can turn it into a thing that proclaims Christ. I think I missed a couple. Well, maybe I didn't. No, we're good. We're fine. I didn't. Whatever situation you find yourself in, whatever imprisonment you're in, God can turn it into a thing that proclaims Christ. Please join me in prayer with your heads bowed and your eyes closed. Lord, as we come to you today, we're going to pray for 3 separate things. And if you find yourself, church, if you find yourself in either of these 3 categories, just join me in prayer for that. First off, Lord, I pray that you would purify our motives. There are some of us who are just really struggling in our hearts. We don't want to do the right thing. We don't, in our heart, care to do the right thing. We don't really even care about what's happening. We're just kind of done with it. Lord, I just pray you'd purify our motives. Purify our motives, God. That in all things we would show Christ. In how we act, but also what we say, what we point things to. And the second thing, Lord, there are some here who are in prison. Lord, I pray that you renew their joy as they're in this prison. Whether it's going to be gone today or gone in 50 years, whatever thing that they're so overwhelmed by, whether it's an emotional prison or a spiritual prison or whatever, Lord, that you just give them joy in the midst of it. Even when their enemies rise up against them and dance over them and proclaim how their wrongness, that you would still give them that joy in the prison, that you would meet them there. But Lord, we don't just pray for people who maybe are struggling with having the right motives. Maybe we're not just praying for people who are not having joy in their prison, but also, Lord, I pray that for all of us, you would help us to change our focus in our sufferings to Jesus. As we're all going through our different life, God, and the different things we're going through, that you'd help us to change our focus to be about you. It's not about me and me crucified. It's about Christ and him crucified. It's not about me being wronged, me being the victim. God, it's all about you. Lord, it's about what you did on a hill far away, on a cross. Lord, it's all about you. Everything we go through, every victory, every defeat, every struggle, it's all about you, God. So, Lord, I pray that for those who are struggling with their motives, you'd give them a new, fresh motive. You'd purify them. And for those who are stuck in their prisons, you'd give them their joy. You'd give them the joy of the Holy Spirit. And for those who are just not focusing on you, help this to be their praise song to you. We love you, Lord. Amen.